There is always evil that lurks in the air, no matter where you are in this world. Today, we're going to talk about the murder of 15-year-old Kiplyn Davis. Spanish Fork, Utah is one of those towns that not a lot of heinous crimes like the one that I'm about to explain to you take place. We're about maybe 20 minutes south of Provo, and Utah, just like a lot of other states, you know, they do have crimes, very, very heinous crimes that were committed here. But by far and large, Utah, if I would pick a state that would be the safest state in the nation, my money would be on Utah. So we're going to go to May 2nd, 1995. Now, in the Davis household, we did not have a very good start to the morning. Kiplyn is sound asleep and her alarm buzzes at 4:30 a.m. Now that's pretty early for a high school kid to be waking up for school. But Kiplyn, she's going to school and she's trying to get her driver's license. She's taking a driver's ed course, but the course starts before school starts. So she has to wake up even earlier to get to school to get that license. So she hits the snooze button on her alarm. 30 minutes later, it's 5 a.m. and her father, Richard, sees his kid still sleeping in bed. So he goes to wake her up. She starts whining. We all know how that works. We were all kids. A lot of us are parents. It's just something that happens in a lot of households. Some kids just don't wake up the way other kids do, you know. And so she's, you know, cranky, groggy. You know, she's telling her dad, you know, I'm already going to be late anyways. Let me sleep in. You know, by the time I get my makeup done and shower and all this. And her dad is a strict parent. And he says, you got to get up. You got to get up. We got to get you to school. So she is in a not so good mood. So she gets ready. She jumps into the car with her mother, Tamara, and they head over to the school, Spanish Fork High School. She drops her daughter off, wishes her a better day, and proceeds to go about her business. Now, we're gonna fast forward about maybe 8 hours later. So Kiplyn's father, he gets home, it's 3:30 p.m. Now, you can basically set your alarm on the fact that Kiplyn is going to be home at 3:30. And when he gets home, she's not there. Okay, so he checks the answering machine and he's expecting to hear her voice. Now, even though it's 1995, Kiplyn has a cell phone. And not a lot of kids had cell phones. And he's expecting her to say like, oh, hey, I'm at my friend's house, or, you know, so I got preoccupied with drama club or whatever. However, he does not hear her voice, but he hears the sound of a school official stating that Kiplyn had not been to any of her classes after lunch was over. So the alarm bells are not quite ringing in the Davis household. So Richard starts calling Kiplyn's friends. Nobody's seen her. She's not at their home. He drives by the church. She's not there. He checks the school. Nobody's seen her. They seen her at lunchtime, but they didn't see her after lunch. Now, one of the students says like, oh, yeah, I seen her at lunch. She was talking to Christopher Jepson. Now, Christopher Jepson and Caitlin, I believe that at the time they were both involved in the drama club. And Christopher, other than being involved in that club, he was the stagehand or the prop person. He would be the one that would set up the furniture and the other stuff that they would use for the plays that the school would put on. So now they're getting really, really worried. And so they go down to the high school and they don't see anybody. Again, they're frantic. Finally, and now it's about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they call the police. And they called the police and they said, hey, our daughter's missing. The police are probably thinking, typical teenager, they like a boy and they're going to stay at their house. Now, that wouldn't be the case really here, because Kiplyn's parents didn't allow her to date. She was only 15 years old at the time. So they did tell her, all right, look, when you turn 16 and you show some responsibility and we start learning to trust you, because it's not like she would go off and do bad things, but as a parent, you want to, protect your daughter. And she was annoyed at them because, she liked the boy and they would not let her go steady with him. So as one of the kids at the school said that they had seen her with Christopher Jepson, they go to his home and they see one light on. By now it's about 10 p.m. and they knock on the door, and Chris's sister opens the door and Richard asks, where's Christopher? Kiplyn's missing and they're looking for her. And she says, Christopher hasn't been here since he left for school early in the morning. And then she, explained to him that since he's in the drama club, he's probably setting up for the play that they're having in the next couple days. And he often stays really late at school. As a matter of fact, he has a key to the auditorium. So 10:30 p.m., they go back to the school. They go back to the church. They're calling all of her friends. And nothing. It's midnight and they cannot sleep. The dad again goes to Chris's house, and as he's driving by the house, he sees a truck there. He sees a light on, and it's after midnight, and he recognizes the truck as belonging to a kid named Rucker Leifson. And so Rucker, from what I remember, believe he was supposed to be in school. Maybe he had dropped out. He wasn't attending school regularly. And I do not know why, but he does not knock on the door to ask about his daughter. Maybe it's too late. It's a very, very quiet town. Maybe she's hiding. Maybe she's upset because they told her she can't date. So she's not calling them. She's not answering her phone, and she's just making them worry. And the sun would come back up the next day, and now it's been 24 hours and she's still missing. So the following day, the school resource officer, who's also a member of the Spanish Fork Police Department, they go and they pull Christopher out of class, and they ask Chris, do you know where Kiplyn is? She's been missing and hasn't came home since they dropped her off at school yesterday morning. And he says, yeah, I was hanging out with her at lunch. We were practicing dance moves, something to that effect. And afterwards, we parted ways. I went to my classes. And then after that, I went and started setting up the stage for the play that we're putting on Friday. And he says, were you hanging out with anybody? He said, yeah, I was hanging out with Rucker and Tim. He's talking about Tim Olson. So he said, well, what'd you guys do? And he said, well, we were hanging out. They were helping me. We were just like, talking or whatever. And then we started, tossing the old football and just kind of talking about boy stuff, what girls we like. And then right at around 11 p.m., it was getting late. So I locked up the auditorium and I went home. And he was like, okay. However, there's a problem. You see, Chris had not been to any of his classes after lunch either, the same as Kiplyn. And so now we got a hole in the story. A couple days pass, a couple weeks pass, A couple months pass. Summer's brutally hot. Summer passes, it cools down. It turns into fall. The leaves start changing colors. Winter's coming. It snows. The Davis family, they still don't know where their daughter is. The earth has circled the sun one time, 365 days, 1 year. Their daughter is nowhere to be found. Now, something very strange happens a year later after their daughter goes missing. Chris goes up to the Davis household, knocks on the door, and Richard answers. And Chris says, I want to talk to you. And Richard says, yeah, what's going on? And he says, I just want to let you know that I had absolutely nothing to do with the disappearance of Kiplyn. And he turns around and walks away. Now, Richard finds that very, very strange. So he contacts the police and he tells them what I just told you. And that's definitely what I would call a red flag for sure. So a member of the Spanish Fork Police Department, they contact Timothy Olson and Rucker Leifson. And they asked them, do you know where Kiplyn is? And they asked them, what were you doing on the evening of May 2nd, 1995? And they basically explained the same story. They were hanging out with Chris, helping him set up the play, the stage, throwing the football around, and then around 11 o'clock, they split. And then Rucker, he went on over to Chris's house, and they hung out till around 12:30, something around there, and then he went home. Okay. And so they're contacting other students. The family's contacting other students. They're desperately trying to find their daughter. Now, somebody has stated by a kid named Brandon that they had seen her talking to Brandon. Now, Brandon was that boy that Kiplyn was upset that she was not allowed to date. And supposedly somebody had said that Brandon had asked her out. She said, yeah. But then Brandon later on started feeling bad because he was kind of going out with another student. So he broke it off with her. She gets upset and she's like, whatever. And Brandon telling the police that he would later go looking for her and, to apologize. And he didn't see her because it was after lunch and she had disappeared. So now the Spanish Fork Police Department, they gather Chris, Tim, and Rucker, and they all give them a polygraph exam. Now, Chris was the first one to do the exam, so they asked Chris, do you know or have anything to do with the disappearance of Kiplyn? And he says no. And the test determined that he was truthful in what he said. Now, Timothy Olson comes in and they hook him up to the polygraph machine. Before they begin the test, they ask him if he can give a written statement of what happened on that day. This guy writes something totally different than what he told them when they last spoke with him. He says that on May 2nd, 1995, after lunch, him, Rucker, and Kiplyn, they ditched school and they went out to the Spanish Fork Canyon. Tim says that he was waiting in his vehicle and that Rucker and Kiplyn had gone walking up a hill. And sometime later, Rucker comes back and Tim asks Rucker, where's Kiplyn? He's like, don't worry about it, let's just go. And now the police, they start pressing him like, well, what happened? And all of a sudden, he just shuts up and he demands a lawyer. They're not getting anywhere with him now. They're trying to talk to him. He's not saying anything more. They go grab Rucker Leifson And he flat out denies that ever happened. He said that's not true. That's not what happened. And he doesn't say a word. And you also have other people in Spanish Fork, rumors start going around. Now you fast forward like 8 years later. The police, they have enough circumstantial evidence to perhaps come with a murder charge, but it's just that, it's circumstantial. They don't have any proof. Kiplyn's body wasn't found. There's no blood. There's nothing. There's nothing. All there is, you know, Tim saying that Rucker has something to do with her disappearance. However, you have people, you know, because, you know, a lot of times people can't keep quiet, especially when they're involved in a heinous crime such as this. So Timothy had later got remarried, and it is now a rumor in Spanish Fork that Timothy basically is responsible for her rape and murder. He's kind of said it under his breath to so many people so many times that it's become a weird thing. And if you were to talk to Tim's ex-girlfriends from the past, they all said that he had one thing in common with them. He was sexually aggressive. And I'll just leave it at that. And Timothy's wife had once stated that they were watching a movie called So I Married an Axe Murderer. And the wife looks at Tim and says, have you ever, like, what's the worst thing you've ever done? And he turns around and looks at her and says, what if I told you that I murdered Kiplyn Davis? And she says, what? And he says, no, I'm just kidding. So you have all of this circumstantial evidence. You have Tim and Rucker at the scene where Kiplyn was last seen by one of these two individuals, but now these guys are not talking. So a grand jury's convened, and there's enough evidence right now to at least charge them with perjury. And by this time now, the FBI is involved. The canyon in Spanish Fork has been searched many, many times by local law enforcement, volunteers, construction equipment has been used, cadaver dogs. Nothing has ever been found. So later on, Timothy is charged with 15 counts of perjury. Rucker was charged with lesser counts, and as was Chris. Now, Timothy, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, in federal prison. It actually might have been 12 years. It was either 12 or 15 years in prison. 12 and a half years, I'm thinking just right off the top of my head. And Chris was sentenced to 5 years and Rucker 4 years. So these guys have gone to prison, but they're still not talking. They're still not saying anything. Now, eventually, as Timothy Olsen is already doing time in a federal prison, they go ahead and they charge him with felony manslaughter. Now, I don't know what the deal was between Tim and the prosecutors, but he got himself a pretty sweetheart of a deal. So basically, he pled guilty to the manslaughter, and in the deal, he does not need to say where Kiplyn's body is. And since he's denying that he killed her, but he's saying, he goes, well, I know who did it. I was there. And well, what happened was somebody took a rock and smacked her upside the head with it. And then I said, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, dude, just help me move her body. They move her body under some trees. They leave the scene. They come back later that night and they bury her body. Now, so Tim just told the court what took place. However, he's not saying who this supposed person is. He's not saying who this stranger is. He's just like, oh, some guy. I can't say who it is. And so they're so frustrated with this case that they just give him that deal to say at least basically we got him on something. Now, he had already been sentenced to 12.5 years. So he gets 15 years for the felony manslaughter, and he agrees to the deal. He doesn't have to say where she is located. He doesn't have to say who's the one that killed her, even though we all know exactly who did. So he's given the 15 years, but that ran concurrent with his sentence. So as the recording of this video, I want to say in 2021, he was up for parole. He was denied. And basically, part of the stipulations when it came to going up for parole is they would have liked to have had him take responsibility for the crime. Maybe tell the parents where he buried her body. And the parents have begged and pleaded with him, but his lips are shut. So as of right now, it looks like he's going to clean up all his time. So he's going to be getting out of prison sometime in the early part of 2026. The other guys have already got out. And as long as nobody talks, this looks like a sad case of them never being able to find Kiplyn's body. This is, in a sense, a cenotaph for Kiplyn Davis. And the 3 individuals that were involved in her murder, they will not tell the family where they buried her body. There was a time that the prosecutors in the case were wanting to seek the death penalty against Timothy Olson. But again, they didn't feel they had enough evidence to convict him based on the verdict of 12 jurors. But a message to the 3 clowns who were responsible for this girl's murder, just to let you guys know, murder has no statute of limitations. So, all right, guys, I'm out of here. I'm heading northeast. We're gonna go to Wyoming. I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.